and within that order I felt nausea rising. Not like a sudden emotion, but like a fog slowly closing in around you. (1938). Jean-Paul Sartre, philosopher, novelist, playwright. A thinker who does not settle for living, but scrutinizes every fiber of reality until he strips it of its illusions. With Nausea, his first novel, Sartre takes us into the mind of Antoine Roquentin, a man who has stopped believing in the stories with which society decorates its own emptiness. In Bouville, a provincial port town, Roquentin spends his hours in cafes watching people. He does not seek company, but confirmation that the world is an inert machine of repeated gestures and glances. One afternoon, in one of those cafes, this intuition takes on flesh. I stepped inside to escape the cold wind blowing along the harbor. The cafe was almost empty. A dense smell of smoke and burnt coffee lingered in the air. Two men were reading the newspaper, one by the window, the other at the counter. A thin waiter with narrow mustache and a gray apron was arranging bottles behind the bar, making the glass clink with gestures that seemed learned once and for all. I sat down in a corner, ordered a black coffee. I rested my hands on the table. It was sticky, the wood worn by years of cups and saucers. I looked around. Dark wooden chairs, small round tables covered with ring stains, the floor mottled with marks left by shoes. The counter, with its polished surface, looked like a domestic altar devoted to routine. The door opened. A fat man came in, took off his hat, and walked up to the counter. He said something to the bartender and smiled, but that smile was not addressed to anyone. It was an automatic smile, born of habit, like tying a necktie. At the table next to mine, a couple spoke in low voices. He nodded, she adjusted her hair, her gaze fixed on emptiness. There was no emotion in their gestures, only the echo of thousands of identical gestures, performed yesterday, the day before, and long before that by others in other cafes. The waitress moved between the tables with the coffee pot in her hand. I watched the steam rise, white and thin, dissolve into the air, a purposeless vapor, like everything else. I opened my notebook and tried to write, but I couldn't find the words. The clinking of cups, the rustling of newspapers, the steady footsteps of the waitress. Every sound locked itself into an invisible net of repetition. I saw an old man bend over his cup, blow twice, take a sip, then place it back in the exact spot from which he had lifted it. Everything followed a fixed order. And within that order I felt nausea rising, not like a sudden emotion, but like a fog slowly closing in around you. It was in the glasses, in the chipped saucers, in the red hands of the waitress, in the shiny skin of the man at the counter. It was in the very air of the cafe, saturated with odors and breath. I asked myself how they could all sit there, drinking, talking, as if life truly had a direction. And I understood that there was no direction. There was only this endless sum of gestures, glances, breaths, leading nowhere, I watched the couple again. He laughed at something that wasn't funny. She stared into the bottom of her cup as if trying to read an invisible oracle. The electric hum of the ceiling lamp at times drowned out the murmur of voices. When I walked out, the street seemed identical to when I had come in, as if time, inside and outside, had never really begun to flow. In that room, Roquentin witnessed the theater of habit, a place where everything moves, yet nothing progresses, where life is reduced to a weary repetition made bearable only by forgetfulness. Sartre, in Nausea, shows us that the true abyss does not lie in extraordinary moments, but in the silent repetition of days, in the small acts we believe to be innocent, yet which bind us to the machinery of existence. That café in Bouville is not so far from us, after all.